It is Dave. It is Duncan back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. For this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the album from UK folk horror band Forlorn. The band's new album, Aether, will be released on March 28th via Church Road Records. So, Aether is the debut album from Forlorn, which embodies a sound unfamiliar to many. Since their inception, the southern UK band have blended expressionist art, crushing soundscapes, and paganism to carve out their own brand of innovative folk horror, and Aether takes that to a whole new level. Through Aether, Forlorn pay their respects to the major elements, acting as part of a progressing metal pagan ritual. On tracks like Spirit, Forlorn pay tribute to the earth element, whereas recent album announcing single Funeral Pyre explores the element of fire. Vocalist Megan Jenkins mentions Funeral Pyre explores the element of fire, and in this sense as a powerful divination tool. We took inspiration from the 1973 film The Wicker Man.
Oh, Jesus Christ, no!
And the concept of human sacrifice in order for things to grow. We invite people to join us as we shed our naysayers and become stronger together. Living in a day and age where music is produced to the grid, Forlorn knew long before creating Aether that they envisioned a sonic bombardment with the help of producer Sam Bloor, who has worked with Graphic Nature, Black Coast and Dream State. That very initial thought became a reality, and the result is a crushing soundscape that's soaked in energy and authentic destruction. The juxtaposition of ethereal vocals with chaotic drums and crushing low-level guitars, paired with vocalist Megan Jenkins' brutal screams, bring together Forlorn's unique sound and visual identity. So, Duncan, we have been on the Forlorn trail for a little while. Reacted to various singles from the album. And I don't know about you, but for me, I think like one of the biggest questions I had was, as singles, they sounded great.
Yep.
But like, how would this all hang together as an album?
Yeah, like if you followed their musical journey through, I think they're a band that are consistently evolving their sound, but evolving it in ways where, especially more recently, I felt like their sound has felt more cohesive, even though the songs themselves are relatively dexterous. So you're getting like different elements, but they definitely felt like they'd shaped something. Specifically, when you jump back to our original reactions, those kind of one and done tracks we were hearing, it was different. It was difficult to imagine how they would cohesively hang on one release. So, I mean, we've been awaiting this for a couple of years now, but the proof is in the pudding, so to speak, with us. Like, it was always going to come down to what's this going to be like in an album form, and how well is it going to hang together? Is it like, and it's worth saying that we have conducted an interview with the lead vocalist now, so we've been able to pitch some of these questions, which we've had answered ahead of this review, which allows me to speak a little bit more confidently about it. But I there was a part of me that kind of felt from some of the singles, like, is this a gimmick, or is this something that the band themselves are behind, or is that a vehicle to make them stand out and be different, similar to how a band would wear face paint or something along those lines? And like, having finished the album for the first time listening, to me, I felt its authenticity. And obviously I don't know if you'll do stuff. Dave's great at linking things and making things happen with interviews to point to videos and shit like that. So he'll do all that shit. But anyway, we go into further detail there. But point of fact, I personally felt listening to it, even for that first time, well, this is not just we're doing it for one album and then the real band will appear. Like, to me, this felt like an accurate and authentic representation. But it was always going to come down to, you can have all the influences, all the cool imagery in the world. If the songs ain't there, Dave.
Yeah. I mean, and the songs were there in the past, but they were a kind of singles band to a point.
100% a singles band, and you got a different side, so to speak. There was core elements, but it was definitely, right, this one's a really heavy one. This one's a really singy one.
Yeah.
This one's the one where they're more folksy. Like they were all different sides of a Rubik's cube. Like which like the colours never fully matched, although they're all on the same cubes. So I am curious, Dave, as a connoisseur of Church Road Records, connoisseur of British metal, a lover of things a little bit heavy, a lover of music that will push boundaries, as someone who himself is a lover, not a hater, of bands that are essentially trying to establish themselves and coming out swinging. Dave, my question to you was, when you hit play in this one, did it live up to the 3 to 4 years of build-up hype that we put on this one, or was this one a colossal letdown?
I think when I hit play on the album and I got through my first listen, my first thought was, okay, they've made an album that has an overall kind of picture. This doesn't sound like 8 individual singles, which was my kind of worry coming into this.
So when you watch a movie and you're really enjoying it, and then you start to think, see if the ending of this movie sucks. It's going to undo the last 2 hours I've really enjoyed here if this has a bad ending. Yeah. And like yourself, I got to the end and it was like that. Oh no, Dave! Like this is crafted. This has been thought out.
Yeah. Aether has been pieced together in a way that really holds your attention. We mentioned obviously the folk horror element, and this is, it's laden with those like eerie kind of atmospheric kind of folk horror elements, which kind of are used as a bit of a kind of glue on the album. They kind of just holds it all together and adds into the whole concept. They tie the ideas and the motifs together to make this an album that gives that feeling of like continuity. There's always something kind of sitting in the background of this album, which makes it a really intriguing listen. Because I felt like I kind of lost count of how many times I heard something different on each release, on each spin of the album, which I think they do incredibly well on this release. The layering of the Forlorn sound is one that it kind of presents itself to you kind of gradually. Like you won't take it all in one listen. And I kind of love an album like that has that kind of depth and that nuance to it. This is not like a surface level type album. And to accomplish that on a debut, I think is very impressive indeed. They did have an EP back in 2023, which was a kind of collection of singles they'd been releasing. But like if you listen to that in comparison to what they've done on here, in that space of time, that the changes are huge. Like, and I think like they had lineup changes right at the kind of start of the Forlorn kind of journey. But if you listen to the earlier material and into that led up to that EP, the material they've put out on the album is just so much more refined. And the EP was very good, especially for it being their first kind of proper release. But when you hear Aether, it just sounds head and shoulders above it. And those improvements are shown in kind of various different ways. I mentioned the kind of the eerie, ominous atmosphere, and they've really found their feet with that element of the band. I think they use it in a much more effective way on the album. But musically, I think they've also opened the door to just so much more stylistically. They are kind of metalcore, progressive metal, in their foundations, but the addition of the more kind of blackened elements, the blackened metal, the kind of symphonic black metal, there's a bit of shoegaze, kind of almost goes into kind of like symphonic death metal at times. It really just takes this to the next level. And ultimately, when you include that with the kind of folk horror elements, it just really separates this band from pretty much most of their peers. And I think I said in one reaction, but Forlorn to me feel like they are in a kind of category of their own. I really struggle to name any other band really that sound like this right now. And I think that in itself is going to work wonders for the band and taking them to that next level. I think sometimes you find with, bands, especially in the metalcore, kind of progressive metal, deathcore, a lot of those bands use these extra elements to almost cover up the fact that their fundamentals aren't all that exciting.
The riff that they've written is a bit plain,
exactly.
So we slap a little synth sound over there, or we add a little technique, and then all of a sudden people aren't paying attention to that. They're talking about the element that sits on top.
Yeah, for sure. But that is not the case with Forlorn. I feel like musically that the riffs are really interesting. There's no kind of like stock riffs on this release. The way they blend styles into one is very clever. There's a riff on Creatress where it's at the kind of first main track of the album, where it goes into that kind of like symphonic kind of black metal territory in the synths and in the vocals. But the guitars, if you listen to the guitars, they keep that kind of like hefty, like almost kind of relate, or kind of say it's similar to kind of Loathe-esque.
It's 100, and they had that involvement early on, and they've not lost it. I'm kind of glad they don't. When it drops into Loathe's a great example of a band that like somehow managed to straddle that line of like atmosphere and kind of lushness and huge like huge ambience. And then they hit you with the riff, and when that riff kicks in, it is so fucking heavy and so disgusting that you literally are floored by it. And Forlorn have kind of weaved that technique smartly through their songwriting, and they don't overuse it. This isn't a long album, so when it does hit, it is memorable for those moments you're like, fuck's sake. Yeah,
it's just a really cool fusion of ideas, and they know exactly when to let that colossally heavy side out, or when to deliver something more intimate or a bit more progressive or intricate. Their awareness of balance on Aether it feels very mature, like
veteran.
At no point does it feel like does anything get overwhelming or do they overplay. They've weighted this album in a way that's very easy to kind of tear through as a listener, but will make you just want to hit that repeat button as soon as it's finished.
Let me put it this way: like we reviewed 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, actually, because time is a flat circle. The last Rolo Tomassi album, and when we were reviewing that, like Rolo Tomassi had been on the go forever, and I was like that. To me, this is the first album where I feel like the balance is perfect between the atmosphere, the the melody, the heaviness. Everything's just like has been laid like perfectly across the board. I feel that balance has been achieved on this debut. Where I feel like they've cracked that code a lot earlier than it's a different climate, and I understand that, and Rolo Tomassi's growing at that sound. But I kind of feel like Forlorn have mastered that now. Which is kind of intimidating, because that's the fundamentals are there solidly now for anything that comes after. Yeah,
for sure. I think the kind of 27-minute runtime does also benefit this album. It's not an album that kind of overstays its welcome at all. I could have probably listened to another 10-15 minutes if I'm honest, but and I think they have it in the tank. Like, I don't think for a second they've laid out all their tricks and ideas fully on this album. I think this is just the start of the kind of reign that Forlorn are about to go on. One thing I think they do have that elevates this even more is vocalist Megan Jenkins. Firstly, like, what a tone! Like, whether it's the kind of savage kind of blackened scream, where she really leans into like that kind of cavernous kind of sound, that kind of blackened realm, or the dreamy kind of ethereal cleans. Her performance on this is second to none, and I really love the fact that she sticks to her roots on this album. She doesn't Americanize anything.
There's like, it's not like there would be ways to popify this. The melody that she does. She doesn't always go with what would be naturally what the ear wants to have melody-wise, and she picks things that actually are more rooted in what I would class as traditional folk singing. In a way where the melody will go off for a wee wander, and it's kind of as refreshing to hear, but it's also, if anything, it fits the fucking brief. If you're coming from that kind of, we are inspired by kind of like kind of those pagan roots and the ideas of witchcraft and kind of folk horror and whatnot, it kind of has to do that. But there's a lot of that isn't actually all that great to listen to the ear. It's relative. She's managed to like somehow gravitate it and make it fit in a way where it's very pleasant to listen to, but it's also, you're waiting for the drop. Like all the way through it, she's like is so sweet and it's so saccharine and it's unorthodox, but you know it belies something where she's gonna let that kind of blackened tone come out, and then like the fucking paint on your walls is gonna start bubbling. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like full of venom. Yeah.
There's also bits of like kind of backing vocals on this as well from other members of the band, which again just kind of like add to the impact. I mentioned on the interview we did that kind of big section at the end of Keeper of the Well has just like this like kind of chant like vocal, kind of group vocal, which is layered with symphonics, and Megan's got a kind of like screaming kind of tone over the top, just like epic sounding. It's very kind of, it does have a kind of religious kind of feel to it. That part at the end, and there's a lot of
ceremony is what I would say. It's a very ceremonial feel about it, which makes sense.
A lot of the album has that through it, and I also said like it sounds like it could have closed the album. It's that kind of like, it's got that kind of exclamation on it where you're like, oh fuck, that could be a closer. But instead they opt for Spirit, which probably goes out in an even bigger bang, to be honest.
Raises the bar.
It's got everything you'd want from a Forlorn track. Great build up, plenty of ebb and flow, really thick guitars, great chorus, and then that ending is just like chunky as fuck right at the end. And I think like when you hear, when I heard like that track on the album, it was like it really made me appreciate the production even more of it. I think if you listen even back to their early stuff, it's production's something they've never really dropped the ball on at all. The stuff they did with George Lever, who's like, he's now of Sleep Token and Loathe kind of fame, but Sam Bloor, who's produced this album, has done an exceptional job. I think he's done a great job of capturing both the kind of heaviness and the ethereal side of the band really well, but also like keeping that kind of character. It's got a very kind of British kind of character about
100%,
it. I mean, you could say like Lewis Johns does a kind of similar thing as well, but I'd say like their 2023 EP did have I'd say a more kind of American kind of coating to it in the production, but for me this felt more representative of Forlorn, and their sound, and I think that's down to a lot of how organic this album sounds. They've got the folk horror element in their music, but that also has crept through into the production as well. This was really, really good. Like this, it definitely lived up to my expectations. The singles were great, so I knew the quality was there. I just wasn't sure how it was going to sound as a full album, but they've done a really, really good job of making this sound cohesive. Everything's really well interlinked, and it leaves you really satisfied and want to just kind of hit that play button again. So yeah, great job, like phenomenal job for a debut album. This is stupidly good. What about yourself? What did you think overall?
Let me pitch my current 2025 dream tour. Right?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So Forlorn, it's a two band bill.
Oh right, okay, 2 bands, right?
Forlorn play this entire album.
Yeah,
it's a 30-minute set. Right. Perfect.
Yeah,
chef's kiss. Sugar Horse come on after. Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That would work. Yeah, that would work.
100% work.
Yep.
Right. Sugar Horse only play the new album as well, and they play the full 29-minute last track. Right. And leave the audience confused. That's the dream.
Yeah.
I'm putting it out there on the internet now. Make it what I'm going to put out in the ether. There we go.
Beautiful.
Check, please. So the where is my where? So yeah, like there was a lot of pressure we had put. like
Yeah.
as if the band don't have enough. Like we kind of put on this, and as soon as we knew there was an album coming and I'd seen the artwork, I was like, yes, they already get it. The artwork for this is it's a very kind of paganistic, like sacrificial, like it could almost be a poster for an A24 movie we haven't watched yet, called Aether. And I was in, like, at that part. It was like they've got they understand the visual. And one thing we've said from the start is that they have a tight grip on the way the band is presented, and that is whether it's through photo, like kind of press PR photographs, anything they do in their music videos. It feels tightly controlled. It feels like we have a scope, we have a vision, that's what we're doing. And I kind of love that about them. And like you mentioned, the singles we'd heard before gave us a flavour of the band, but what it didn't give us was the album. And I just want to basically kind of like agree with everything you said. Like, to me, the album delivered on that.
Yeah.
But the album delivered on that because I think the band have had enough time to quantify in their songwriting what an album looks like, as opposed to this is a cool song, which is great, but those don't always find their footing in a full album, especially one as short as this, which is sub 30 minutes. And as a result, in a sub 30 minute album, you don't really have a lot of room to fuck around. Like, needless interludes will stand out as padding for time. Tracks that run a bit long with outros that are too long are padding for time. And Forlorn seemed to have managed to, like, almost Neo in the Matrix, like, dodge all those bullets and just craft something that's really, really well thought out, well measured, well delivered, and gives you, I would argue, the best aspects of anything you've heard the band done before, but refined in the... It's almost as if you were kind of sitting with the band and you were pulling out all the elements on a chart, but there was a little dial beside them that you could just turn up a notch, and someone's managed to be able to turn all those elements up. So everything you've heard, like, this is not going to be one where, like, it sounds so different from anything you've heard Forlorn done before. What it just sounds like is the band doing it better than what they've done before. And that stands out no more so than vocally. I think the vocals in this album, not to dismiss anything from the EP, but this one just sounds more confident, specifically in that more melodic range. It felt a bit rough and ready on earlier tracks. On this one here, there's a confidence and a vulnerability in the confidence that just kind of shines through. The savage tone is just fucking great, and I stress this whenever we talk about female. I get this a lot when I say female metal vocalist and someone says you mean metal vocalist, as if I'm like, it's not a slight. Like, women have a bigger register, a bigger range, and I would argue are better screamers than men, right? Like a good female scream on a metal track, to me, like, the hairs in the back of my neck will go up straight away. There are, like, innumerable women I can mention that do that to me in music. There are I couldn't even count on one hand a male vocal scream that has had that same impact to me, where I feel it in my fucking bones, right? And that's why I differentiate. It's a different style, it's a different technique, it's a different delivery. She's a fucking pro at this. As someone who, like, doesn't even do this full time, does this as like this is the side gig. Check out the interview. It's remarkable, and it's well used here. The dexterity of how it's placed, the placement of what she does, the fact that she's conscious of when to deliver a hook, when to do something more vulnerable and stripped back and a little bit more insular, when to go full fucking beast mode and savage. It's all placed in the right place at the right time, measured throughout the entire runtime of the album. Taking that aside, the band are just on fucking point here. The riffs are interesting. The chord progressions are really good. That distortion sound, like when the guitar gets heavy, it's just fucking. We obviously got a little bit of inside baseball chat about the production techniques and the drums, which explains some stuff to me, because at times the drums are, it's like being punched in the gut. There's so much power behind it. Check out the interview for more information. So it's really good. They also have done the smart thing here. Instead of over-committing and over-promising on their first album, they have delivered something which leaves you wanting another 1 or 2 tracks here. It's enough to get people in. It doesn't overwhelm them. If anyone is unsure of the quote-unquote gimmick, they're not giving too much of it, but also they show several sides of their musical and songwriting ability, which to me are kind of remarkable and can be built on. So I like a lot of what I'm hearing here. I'm like that, where you could like take this to the next level here. You rein back this. You could add this element here. You go a little bit more folksy here. You could actually change the instrumentation and strip a lot of this out. You could go so much heavier. Like they've created something here which, personally, from my point of view, it allows them to build vastly on, which is very exciting. Because once again, they're very young in their career. They've been around for a good couple of years, but this is the first time you're getting to hear them in a long form, and I kind of think they've cracked that. Production you've talked about is just chef's kiss good. It's really, really well put together. I get all the creepy nuance in the background weighted down with all the punch that, when it is required, delivers. We talked already about Keeper of the Well. I think it's a really standout track because it's the first one where I was like, if you'd given us a whole ceremonial album of like 6-7 minute tracks which had this kind of theatre about them, that would also work, but you're conscious that that diminishes your listenership, so you put it in a place which, like you, I'm like that, I'm listening to that, I'm like that closing song, and they're like and then they come away with a Veiled One, which is this really, really, really kind of nice, kind of haunting track which builds into Spirit, which is a fucking perfect album closer. Just delivers all the goods, raises the stakes, builds things up. Forlorn are really interesting because they straddle like fantasy booking tours. I could put them on loads of like either supports or like kind of mid-card stuff or festivals or whatever, and they would fit comfortably, and I think people would go along for the journey. A comment that I made, and it might have been off air in the interview, was I like bands that deliver experiences live. Like there's a handful of gigs that will always stand out. They're kind of top tier for me, and they're not because the band played the best set of songs they will ever play that night. It's because the experience of being in that place, in that time, in that venue, and what the band did on the scale that they did it will stick with me forever. Gojira is always going to be one of them. I've seen Gojira play better than the performance they did at Tuts. Right? Like, with better songs and all the rest. The Tuts gig will always be my favourite gig because, one, it was intimate, and two, we had heard them, but we'd never heard them. And then we saw them live and we're like, these guys are fucking better live. And like, I love the album. This doesn't make sense. I get a feeling creatively as Forlorn are that I think that if you're intrigued, your interest is piqued once you see these guys live. I think, and this is what I said, is that experience is going to be something you quote 40 years from now, and you're going to be a fan for life. We're primed for them now. I think with all the groundwork for what a lot of other bands have done, have kind of set the stage for something that's just a little bit different. And Forlorn fit that mold for me in a way where I'm, one, incredibly intrigued to see how this lands, incredibly intrigued to see what they're like live, but moreover, where they go next, because I have a sneaky suspicion that the next release might blow this one out of the water. And how can I be confident in that? Because we are only 3-4 years from when we first heard them, and this blows that stuff out the water. And we've been told that this stuff is what, 1.5 2 years old. So yeah, this is like it is ridiculously good for a debut, and any reticence that I had that it might not deliver has been completely put to bed very fucking quickly by how confidently it was delivered. So there you go.
Okay, final thing, scores.
Our review is now longer than the album.
Yes, it is.
Sorry.
Shocker. I think this is excellent. Like for a debut album, like how many bands on their debut put out something of this quality? Like it's very rare. I think they are well ahead of where they should be in terms of songcraft and just developing as a band. I feel like a lot of this album like hits these really like tremendous heights. Like so many, there's like 3 or 4 tracks where I'm like, my god, that is just exceptional. I do think there's even more to come. I think I feel like this is him just opening the door, and it's going to allow them to continue to explore and expand and experiment their sound even more. This feels like this is just the tip of the iceberg, and it's fucking great. Like to start off like this, like hats off. Yeah, pretty rare, but I'm gonna go 4.5 on this. Like, it's a debut album. Not a lot of bands hit this kind of level straight off the bat, but I feel like they're at this level already. So it's a 4.5 for me. What are you thinking?
If this band never topped the quality here, they've released an excellent fucking album.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like an album to me that stands out amongst a genre which has few bands that manage to identify themselves in a way where I could pick them out from listening to like 10 seconds of played song. That being said, I am 100% with you. I think we're in for something special. I'm going to come in 4.5. I don't think, like I say, there's nothing, like, the 0.5 knocking them down isn't because I think the next album is going to be a 5. It's because I know the next album will be better than this.
Yeah.
And that 0.5 to me is negligible in terms of what you get here. As listens, it's quick, it's to the point, it gives you so much in 29 minutes. I can't stress that enough. Like kitchen sink should be delivered with this album, if you purchase it. But also, I kind of think this is the perfect example of a band, the same way I felt when we listened to Harriet's debut. Kind of feel like we've been circling the drain a while with this band, waiting on the album coming out, and then it comes out and you're like, that the UK music scene is fucking vibrant right now, and this is why. Eclectically, I think for a collective group of islands that is really relatively small at the moment, there's this kind of renaissance in alternative and heavy music that seems to be born out of like the lack of confines and creativity. It's like people saying, no, I'm not going to be put this way and I'm not going to be told not to do that. This element might be a little bit goofy, but we're going to bring it in, or this element may be not like adjacent to the genre, but we're going to try it. And as a result, you're getting the best of what these bands can do because they are unafraid to push the envelope. Forlorn are a band that consistently through this release are unafraid to push the envelope, even though some people might get behind the pagan stuff. Some people might just appreciate it for the hooks. Some people might just appreciate it for the riffs, but it didn't stop them doing what they did on the release. So 4.5 from me. Incredibly excited to see them live, and not that I want to like jump them forward 2 years. Can't wait for the next release.
For sure. So Forlorn, Aether, out on March 28th on Church Road Records. Links below to the band, to the pre-order. I'll put up one of the singles as well so you can check out Give this a listen. These guys are excellent, and a relatively new band in the grand scheme of things in the UK. Show them some love. Check out the album. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.